They said no human could survive here, Nathan West muttered to himself as he stepped onto the frozen plateau, the wind lashing through the cracks in his suit, snow swirling into the cracked visor of his helmet, and for a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. The shuttle had barely survived atmospheric entry, metal groaning and sparks showering the icy surface, leaving Nathan to assess the damage. Noticing that the emergency systems were flickering erratically, temperature sensors reading -40 degrees Fahrenheit, and as he staggered to stabilize the hull, a flash of orange reflected off the crystalline snow drew his gaze upward, revealing an enormous figure, 8 feet tall, with glowing golden eyes and armor made of overlapping scales, each catching the light in a way that made her appear both regal and untouchable. And for the first time Nathan felt a curiosity that bordered on awe as he realized this wasn't just an alien encounter, it was a first contact. Unlike any other, the alien queen's presence dominating the landscape as she surveyed him with an intensity that made the snowstorm itself seem less threatening than her scrutiny, and yet despite her height and apparent power, there was something in the way she moved, fluid, deliberate, almost as if she were measuring the human before her, that hinted at an awareness of difference, of possibility, of something hidden beneath the surface of this fragile, pink-skinned creature, and Nathan's own pulse quickened, not from fear, but from the knowledge that the world had just shifted, that every step he took could reveal discoveries about survival, morality, and the unexpected resilience that humanity carried into the coldest corners of the galaxy, the air vibrating with tension, charged with the unspoken question of what happens when courage meets an intelligence far beyond human understanding, when a solitary figure of persistence and empathy is placed in a world designed to test limits. And as the wind whistled and the snow hammered against the shuttle's hull, Nathan realized that the discovery awaiting him would not just change his perception of the alien species, but challenge the very assumptions of what humans were capable of in the vast, indifferent expanse, leaving the audience on the edge of curiosity, bracing for the revelation that every instinct, every decision, every act of kindness in this frozen alien realm could tip the balance between being merely another explorer, lost to the void, or becoming the first human to truly bridge worlds. And the storm thickened, shadows stretching and flickering over the crystalline landscape, hinting at dangers and secrets yet unseen, all while the alien queen's golden gaze followed, unblinking, the start of a story that would escalate far beyond the limits of imagination. Nathan West felt the icy wind biting through every seam of his suit as he cautiously stepped closer to the towering figure, the alien queen's golden eyes tracking his every movement with a measured curiosity that made his pulse quicken, the reflective scales of her armor catching the dim sunlight in shards that sparkled like distant stars, and for a moment, Nathan could not distinguish where the snow ended and her form began, creating a sense of disorientation that amplified both his fascination and his unease. He raised a scanner from his belt, observing the intricate layers of her armor, the overlapping plates and luminescent edges designed not only for defense but as a signal of rank and presence, and as he did, the queen tilted her head, the gesture subtle yet deliberate, acknowledging his presence while silently testing his intentions, the air between them charged with an unspoken question about power, survival, and understanding, Nathan's mind racing as he realized that every decision he made could shift the balance, that a single misstep might close the doorway to discovery entirely, and yet even in this tense standoff, he could detect the delicate movements of her fingers over the ceremonial sigils on her gauntlets, patterns that seemed to communicate across distance and species in ways he could only begin to hypothesize. And when a sudden shift of sunlight reflected off the ice created a momentary brilliance along the ridge, it revealed the scale of the plateau and the isolation of their encounter, a frozen expanse with no shelter, emphasizing both the vulnerability of his position and the significance of this first contact. Nathan's heart beat faster, not from fear but from the awareness that this meeting held the potential to uncover truths about alien cognition, culture, and the unexpected ways humans could interact with such advanced beings. The queen taking a deliberate step forward, each footfall echoing across the crystalline snow, maintaining her imposing presence while leaving a space for dialogue, observation, and cautious exchange, and Nathan noted the subtle temperature shift around her, a natural effect of her physiology, which served as a silent reminder of the biological divide and the mysteries lying in wait for him to explore, his curiosity mounting as he realized that this was more than an encounter. It was an opportunity to observe, learn, and influence in a scenario where discovery, adaptation, and ethical decision-making were inseparable. And as he adjusted the scanner to map the energy signatures of her armor, Nathan understood that the Queen's reaction would provide critical insight into the thresholds of alien tolerance, behavior, and perception, a delicate dance of observation and interpretation that could determine the trajectory of every interaction that followed, and in that instant, the frozen wind, the glinting snow, and the alien presence converged to reveal a truth both compelling and intimidating. This first contact was not just a meeting of species, it was a revelation that everything Nathan thought he knew about survival, diplomacy, and the unexpected capacities of human ingenuity would be tested, elevated, and perhaps transformed forever. The icy plateau stretched endlessly, a landscape of shimmering crystalline formations that reflected the pale light in angles Nathan West had never imagined possible, and as he stepped carefully over the uneven snow, the alien Queen Auralia led him toward a ridge where jagged spires of orange-hued mineral rose like the architecture of a forgotten civilization, each formation etched with luminescent runes that pulsed faintly, suggesting some form of communication or energy flow. Nathan's scanner picked up subtle vibrations, revealing an invisible network connecting the spires, a lattice of power that seemed almost alive, and he realized that the entire plateau was more than terrain, it was a living part of Auralia's domain, an environment designed for observation, ceremony, and regulation of those who entered it, and as he followed her towering form, the patterns in the snow revealed traces of previous passage, deliberate paths that hinted at controlled interaction with intruders or guests, the spacing and orientation suggesting an understanding of gravity, friction, and sensory perception beyond human experience, making Nathan acutely aware of both the beauty and the potential danger of every step. Auralia paused atop a ridge, the sun catching her golden eyes as she surveyed the plateau with a subtle tilt of her head, an almost imperceptible gesture that indicated she was considering the human in front of her, calculating how his movement, decision-making, and observation might affect the balance of her environment, and Nathan, observing the same landscape from a lower vantage point, noticed that each spire emitted a faint hum, harmonics that resonated through the soles of his boots, suggesting that even the ground itself could carry messages, warnings, or indicators of status, adding another layer of complexity to the alien world. While he tried to map it all mentally, the air between them carried an unfamiliar tang, a combination of mineral scent, ozone, and something biological that hinted at the presence of lifeforms capable of communicating through vibrations and electromagnetic pulses, and as Nathan advanced, the reflective surfaces of Auralia's armor amplified the scattered light, creating a dynamic interplay that made it difficult to focus solely on her form, forcing him to expand his awareness to the entire plateau, the spires, the runes, and the invisible lattice. And he realized that every observation could reveal patterns, hierarchies, or rules that might govern this alien space, that understanding the environment was as critical as understanding the Queen herself. Curiosity and caution warred within him, because each discovery seemed to open new possibilities and new stakes, the harmony of the spires suggesting both order and control, a system designed to reveal those who could navigate it successfully while exposing the unprepared to potential error. And as he stepped onto a platform formed by interlocking mineral ridges, Nathan felt the subtle feedback in the ground, almost like a pulse, which shifted his balance slightly, revealing that the environment itself tested adaptability, observation, and intuition, and with that realization came the knowledge that what he had thought was a simple path across snow and rock was in fact an elaborate network engineered to measure, instruct, and perhaps judge, leaving Nathan with the sense that every movement mattered, every glance could reveal information, and that the plateau was a stage where discovery, awareness, and understanding could redefine the limits of human interaction with an intelligence as advanced and deliberate as Auralia's. As Nathan West followed Auralia across the ridge, he noticed subtle anomalies in her scanning pattern, the way her luminous eyes adjusted to track him while analyzing the faint heat signature of his body and the micro-movements in his gait, and it became clear that the Queen was encountering something entirely foreign, the human form moving with an agility and intuition that did not conform to any pre-recorded template of known species on her charts. Each step he took, each pause to examine a rune or the crystalline snow beneath, seemed to register in her observation matrix, a pattern of cognition and adaptation that sparked a quiet curiosity within her, one that challenged centuries of alien assumptions about dominance, capability, and perception, and Nathan, unaware of the intensity of this scrutiny, continued to navigate the plateau with deliberate care, adjusting his path to avoid disturbing the harmonic pulses emitted by the spires, inadvertently demonstrating awareness of environmental feedback that Auralia noted as exceptional. As he moved, small discoveries accumulated, an imprint of a previous creature, the way his boots compressed snow in a manner that allowed him to move silently despite the uneven surface, the way he adjusted his balance to compensate for subtle vibrations that could destabilize lesser beings, and each observation seemed to elevate Auralia's assessment, a quiet recognition that this human was not merely surviving, but interacting with the environment on a level that defied her expectations, and the revelation triggered subtle shifts in the ambient energy around her, the spires resonating faintly as if acknowledging the anomaly, the plateau itself responding to Nathan's presence in ways that suggested a link between cognition, movement, and ecosystem awareness. And she realized that the human's awareness of patterns, feedback, and adaptation could be exploited or perhaps integrated into their understanding of cross-species interactions, creating a potential avenue of influence and observation that was previously unconsidered. The tension in the frozen air grew not from hostility, but from the stakes of discovery, the implications that a single human could introduce variables into a system so meticulously calibrated that centuries of alien oversight might be insufficient to predict outcomes. And as Nathan paused to analyze a set of runes etched along a spire, Auralia's gaze intensified, registering micro-expressions, subtle postural adjustments, and rapid assessments that revealed his cognitive processes in real time. And in that moment, the alien queen discerned a truth that challenged all preconceptions. Human beings could process, adapt, and respond in ways that her species had never anticipated, a revelation that would change the way she measured intelligence, capability, and potential impact across the plateau and perhaps beyond, leaving both of them in a suspended state of observation and anticipation, a quiet acknowledgement that what was unfolding was not merely a traversal of terrain, but an initiation into an uncharted dialogue between species, awareness, and the unforeseen possibilities that the human presence represented. As Nathan West moved deeper into the alien plateau, the harmonic pulses emitted by the spires became more pronounced, resonating in patterns that suggested an underlying intelligence embedded in the very terrain. And as he carefully adjusted his scanning device to measure energy fluctuations, he observed that the readings fluctuated in response to his movements, a feedback loop indicating that his presence was being analyzed, interpreted, and integrated into the environment, revealing a level of complexity that defied prior human understanding. Auralia maintained a deliberate distance, her posture rigid yet observant, as if she were conducting her own study of this anomaly before her, noting how Nathan's gait, balance, and subtle adjustments to terrain were not simply reactions but indications of predictive reasoning and adaptation to dynamic conditions, a level of cognitive processing that suggested extraordinary survival instincts and a capacity to interpret alien signals on an instinctual level. And this observation sparked a quiet but intense curiosity within her, the kind that drove centuries of alien exploration and research into unknown species. And she realized that Nathan was exhibiting traits that were rare even among the most advanced specimens recorded in her empire, a human whose perception, calculation, and adaptation worked seamlessly together in an environment that would destabilize most other beings. As he paused to analyze the runes etched into a cluster of spires, Nathan noticed subtle variations in the luminescence that corresponded to patterns of energy distribution, revealing that the plateau functioned as both a repository of information and a testbed for environmental interaction. And every measurement he made, every adjustment, altered the resonance slightly, producing a real-time response that was both revealing and consequential, providing data that could inform survival strategies or negotiation of spatial awareness in the alien landscape. Auralia's eyes narrowed, capturing minute details of muscle tension, timing of motion, and the way Nathan's scanning gestures reflected his thought process, and she began cataloging the ways in which his biology and cognition created unanticipated variables in a system she understood to be predictable, exposing a vulnerability in her assumptions about interspecies interaction. Nathan, unaware of the intensity of her observation, continued to interpret the plateau, noting correlations between his movements, the harmonic pulses, and the reflective angles of the spires, realizing that each discovery contributed to a larger understanding of the alien environment, and that the human ability to integrate observation, adaptation, and strategic response was producing insights even the Queen herself had not anticipated, revealing an entirely new dimension of human capability in a world designed to test, measure, and challenge. The air seemed charged with the realization that the simple act of walking, observing, and responding could ripple outward, influencing not only immediate perceptions but potentially altering the structural understanding of the plateau, and Nathan's every step created a cascade of feedback that suggested his species might possess latent faculties unaccounted for in any prior analysis, forcing Auralia to reconsider long-held assumptions about human interaction with alien systems, and to recognize that what she was witnessing could shift the balance of observation, control, and knowledge in ways that demanded careful attention, study, and perhaps re-evaluation of her own strategies of engagement with other species. The ambient hum of the alien plateau shifted as Nathan West moved deliberately across the reflective mineral ridges, each step producing subtle vibrations that intertwined with the latent frequencies emitted by the spires, and Auralia observed him with heightened focus, her golden eyes tracking minute adjustments in his posture, balance, and the way his muscles compensated for uneven surfaces, revealing a level of adaptability that challenged centuries of her empire's assumptions about survival and perception. Nathan paused to examine a cluster of luminescent runes, noting how the energy patterns reacted to the presence of a biological entity, and as he traced the lines with a gloved hand, he unintentionally created slight fluctuations that sent ripples through the harmonic lattice, exposing an interaction between living cognition and environmental resonance that Auralia had never recorded, a discovery that implied humans could not only survive but influence the plateau's informational network in ways that were previously unimaginable. And the Queen's scan protocols shifted subtly as she processed the data, recognizing that the human presence represented a variable her historical records did not account for, one that could have far-reaching implications across her empire. The realization escalated as she analyzed Nathan's methodical approach to pattern recognition, his ability to anticipate environmental feedback, and his instinctive calibration to the energy pulses, which together demonstrated an integrative intelligence that exceeded the predictive models embedded in her observation systems, and this prompted Auralia to adjust her own behavior, testing thresholds and introducing subtle stimuli to gauge his responses, a deliberate escalation that could reveal potential alliances or unanticipated outcomes, and Nathan responded with careful measurement, each motion amplifying the data he was inadvertently generating, illustrating that human ingenuity operated on multiple layers of cognition, adaptation, and environmental interaction simultaneously, revealing both his curiosity and the capacity to navigate complexity in real time. As he continued, Nathan noted the interplay of light across the spires, how shadows shifted in response to his movements, revealing hidden geometries and pathways that suggested a design both ceremonial and functional, capable of encoding information through orientation, reflection, and resonance, and each observation expanded the scope of discovery, providing insight into the plateau's multidimensional communication network. While Auralia processed this revelation with a mixture of scientific fascination and cautious awareness, realizing that the human's actions could propagate effects far beyond immediate observation, a fact that escalated the stakes of every step he took, and forced her to consider the broader implications for her empire's understanding of intelligence, adaptation, and the unknown variables introduced by a species long underestimated, culminating in a growing acknowledgement that the human presence on the plateau was not merely incidental but potentially transformative, capable of altering historical assumptions, strategic calculations, and the fundamental evaluation of cross-species potential in ways that demanded both immediate attention and long-term consideration. As Nathan West stepped onto a plateau that shimmered with iridescent hues, the ground beneath him emitted faint harmonic pulses that aligned with the energy signatures of the towering spires, and with every careful footfall, he realized that these signals were not static but responsive, subtly shifting in ways that mirrored his own movement patterns, creating a symphony of interaction that hinted at a deeper intelligence embedded within the landscape. Auralia's golden eyes narrowed as she observed these subtle exchanges, her mind calculating probabilities and consequences, noting that this human was not merely adapting to the environment but actively influencing it, each adjustment producing measurable shifts in the harmonic frequencies that suggested a level of consciousness capable of interfacing with systems she had assumed were impervious to external influence. And this recognition sent a cascade of unexpected insights through her cognitive processors, forcing her to reconsider prior assumptions about human capacity, resilience, and adaptability. Nathan paused to recalibrate his scanning array, noticing how the luminescent runes etched into the crystalline spires responded in a sequence of pulses that seemed almost intentional, as if the plateau itself were acknowledging his presence, and in doing so revealed a mechanism of environmental feedback designed to test, measure, and communicate with any intelligent species that ventured into its domain. And Auralia, witnessing these interactions, felt a subtle shift in her perception, the layers of data she had relied on for centuries now proving insufficient to fully predict or explain the unfolding behavior, compelling her to integrate these anomalies into her understanding of cross-species dynamics. The implications escalated rapidly as she compared these readings with historical records, realizing that a human had never demonstrated such nuanced environmental cognition, the ability to interpret, respond, and subtly manipulate feedback loops in real time, challenging the foundations of her knowledge and introducing variables that could reshape protocols for observation, engagement, and evaluation within the Empire. Nathan's continued exploration amplified these patterns, his awareness of angles, reflective surfaces, and harmonic vibrations producing cascading effects that hinted at a new form of interaction between sentient beings and controlled environments, revealing that what he considered cautious analysis was in fact an advanced form of adaptive intelligence, and the Queen's internal assessment flagged this as an unprecedented anomaly, triggering the recognition that the consequences of his presence extended beyond immediate survival, touching upon strategy, influence, and potential coevolution of understanding across species boundaries. As the light shifted across the plateau, casting elongated shadows and highlighting previously unnoticed structures, Nathan discovered a subtle lattice of energy nodes connecting the spires, their oscillations modulated by his own biosignature, revealing that his existence and actions could unintentionally influence the broader system. And Auralia, processing this revelation, realized that a single human could introduce variables capable of transforming historical assumptions, strategic planning, and the Empire's approach to interaction with unknown intelligent life, marking a turning point that redefined both observation and expectation in the presence of the human anomaly. The realization that Nathan West could influence the harmonic pulses of the plateau sent a ripple through Auralia's perception, her golden eyes widening as she assessed the magnitude of this discovery, and it became clear that the human presence was not just a localized anomaly but a potential disruptor to the broader network of environmental control and information embedded across the spires. As she mentally cross-referenced historical records, the implications escalated rapidly, revealing that a species previously considered limited in cognitive flexibility could now interface with structures that her civilization had relied on for millennia to maintain balance, communication, and hierarchy. And the sheer unpredictability of Nathan's adaptive responses suggested that established protocols might no longer apply, forcing her to reconsider centuries of strategic planning and risk assessment. The energy patterns in the runes flickered with a subtle tension, almost as if responding to the revelation itself. And Auralia recognized that this interaction could have consequences beyond mere observation, potentially affecting decision-making across her empire, from ceremonial practices to resource distribution, and even diplomatic interactions with other advanced species. As the precedent of a human influencing complex systems had never been recorded, Nathan, continuing his methodical mapping and analysis, created minor shifts in the lattice of energy without conscious intent, each movement producing subtle feedback that indicated not only his awareness but also the potential for a new form of symbiotic interaction between species and environment. And Auralia's processors raced to calculate the scope, speed, and implications of such influence, revealing that the stakes had escalated far beyond initial expectations, where a single human could alter variables once assumed immutable and introduce outcomes that her civilization had not prepared for. As she observed him adjusting his balance, recalibrating scanning devices, and interpreting the oscillating signals of the spires, the Queen understood that Nathan's presence represented a living experiment in adaptability, cognition, and environmental influence, challenging the rigidity of established norms and highlighting a need to reassess both species and system capabilities, a shift that could redefine engagement strategies, influence projections, and the conceptualization of intelligence itself across her empire. The tension in the plateau intensified, the luminous runes pulsing in response to Nathan's movement, a visual confirmation of the impact he had on the broader lattice. and Auralia noted that this single encounter, this intersection of human ingenuity with alien infrastructure, could have cascading effects, from scientific observation to policy reconsideration, suggesting that the human species might possess untapped potential to change the assumptions that underpinned her civilization's understanding of the universe. Every action Nathan took generated data, reaction, and insight that forced a recalibration of perception. And Auralia's internal assessment concluded that the consequences were profound. A human had inadvertently demonstrated capabilities that could alter historical interpretations, influence current empire strategies, and create a precedent for future interspecies engagement, leaving both her and the plateau itself poised on the edge of discovery, implication, and transformation. As the sun dipped lower over the alien plateau, casting long iridescent shadows across the crystalline spires, Nathan West and Auralia paused atop a ridge where the energy lattice intersected, and the subtle harmonics of the spires shifted in response to Nathan's presence, creating a complex pattern that neither had anticipated. Nathan's analytical focus revealed correlations between his own biosignature and the plateau's resonance, suggesting that his movements were actively influencing the environment in ways that defied standard predictions, and Auralia observed the data, her mind processing the implications with a mixture of fascination and concern, noting that every human adjustment produced measurable effects across the lattice, and that these effects could propagate unpredictably if not accounted for, creating a sense of tension as the scale of influence became apparent. As Nathan crouched to adjust his scanner, a pulse of light flickered along a spire, highlighting a hidden sequence of runes that had been dormant until his presence activated them, revealing a layer of encoded information and adaptive response built into the plateau itself. And Auralia realized that the human was not merely a passive observer but an active participant, capable of eliciting responses from the environment that no prior species had managed. The Queen's eyes tracked every micro-movement, the subtle shifts in balance and gesture, the way Nathan interpreted feedback and modified his approach in real time, and with each observation, she catalogued new variables that challenged the established understanding of species-environment interaction, recognizing that this one human could alter historical interpretations, strategy, and predictive models across her empire. Tension mounted as Nathan discovered that the feedback from the spires was not uniform, that small deviations in posture or timing caused cascading effects across distant nodes, revealing a dynamic network where his influence extended beyond immediate perception. And Auralia noted that the implications reached far beyond the plateau itself, potentially affecting ceremonial practices, resource management, and interspecies protocols. As Nathan moved along the ridge, scanning each energy node with meticulous attention, the pattern of resonance began to synchronize in unexpected ways, creating a harmonic convergence that neither had foreseen. And Auralia's internal calculations indicated that the human's adaptive capacity and intuitive interaction were producing emergent behavior that could not be simulated or predicted, a revelation that escalated the stakes and intensified the sense of personal tension between them. The plateau seemed to acknowledge his presence, the crystalline surfaces reflecting light and energy in patterns that mirrored his motions. And Auralia recognized that the human's engagement with the environment was not just analytical but instinctively attuned, capable of provoking responses that reshaped the plateau's dynamics, challenging her assumptions and redefining the parameters of their encounter. Every step Nathan took, every adjustment to his scanning devices, and every observation he made reverberated through the energy lattice, creating a feedback loop that highlighted the interplay between species and environment. And Auralia felt the growing awareness that this single human's presence had the potential to influence outcomes, alter historical assumptions, and introduce variables into her empire's understanding of intelligence and adaptability, marking a pivotal moment in their interaction and establishing a personal tension that would guide every decision and observation to follow. As Nathan West moved toward the center of the plateau, Auralia's analysis of his behavior revealed layers of cognitive processing she had not anticipated. The human's movements not only adapted to the environmental feedback but also appeared to anticipate and integrate the subtle harmonic fluctuations of the spires, demonstrating an intuitive understanding of complex energy systems that suggested a hybrid interaction between observation and instinct. And this insight struck her as both remarkable and potentially transformative, indicating that the human mind could bridge gaps between species and environment in ways previously unrecorded. As he adjusted his scanner to track these oscillations more precisely, Nathan discovered that the energy lattice was capable of storing transient information about interactions, creating a form of environmental memory that recorded sequences of movement, pressure, and light reflection, and the realization that his presence could be leaving a measurable imprint caused a subtle escalation of stakes, as both he and Oralia considered the long-term implications of this interaction, including how it could affect the interpretation of history, protocol, and the understanding of intelligence within her civilization. The Queen's attention intensified as she observed how Nathan's adaptive choices triggered responses in distant spires, revealing a network of causality that linked physical presence to energy modulation across the plateau, and she calculated that if this pattern continued, it could propagate effects far beyond the immediate environment, influencing ceremonial structures, communication nodes, and even interspecies interactions in ways that could reshape strategic assumptions. Nathan's observations led him to note the potential for cross-species learning embedded in these responses, as the energy lattice seemed to adjust its patterns in anticipation of corrective actions, revealing a form of dynamic interaction between human cognition and alien infrastructure that neither species had previously considered, and the realization that a single human could unlock such possibilities added tension to their encounter, highlighting both the potential and the unpredictability of what was unfolding. As he mapped the energy flows and harmonics, Nathan became aware that his actions were creating a cascade of subtle but detectable effects, each step producing variations that illuminated hidden pathways and previously dormant nodes, and Oralia recognized that this could redefine the rules of engagement with other species, forcing the Empire to consider adaptive intelligence as a significant factor in the evaluation of interstellar interaction. The plateau, with its shimmering spires and responsive lattice, became not only a landscape but a living laboratory, and the human's capacity to integrate observation, movement, and feedback created a new paradigm of discovery, challenging centuries of assumptions about intelligence, adaptability, and potential, and leaving both Nathan and Oralia on the cusp of a revelation that could alter their understanding of coexistence, influence, and the future trajectory of human and alien interaction across the galaxy, marking a critical moment where discovery itself had the power to change everything. As Nathan West paused at the edge of a crystalline spire, the plateau beneath him seemed to hum in anticipation, the energy lattice responding to his presence with patterns that oscillated more rapidly than before, and he realized that the subtle feedback from his own biosignals had created a dynamic connection with the environment, producing effects that neither he nor Oralia had anticipated. The Queen's golden eyes narrowed, observing the way his movements and decisions propagated through the lattice, revealing a form of influence that could ripple across the plateau and potentially affect distant nodes in ways that challenged her previous understanding, and she recognized that a single human's actions could now have consequences on the scale of historical precedent, environmental control, and interspecies interaction, forcing her to weigh the potential outcomes of every motion, every choice, and every observation he made. Nathan, sensing the responsiveness of the system, carefully tested variations in his movement, noticing that even minor adjustments could trigger resonances that revealed previously hidden sequences within the runes, and the realization that his physical presence could uncover latent structures embedded in the plateau created a tension that was both thrilling and sobering, as each discovery threatened to alter the equilibrium of the alien network in ways that might be unpredictable or irreversible. Oralia, analyzing these developments, understood that this encounter was more than a simple observation or a first contact. It represented a pivotal moment in which human adaptability and ingenuity had demonstrated the capacity to challenge and potentially reconfigure established systems, historical records, and the assumptions underpinning her empire's approach to intelligence and influence, and the stakes of the interaction had escalated accordingly, creating a charged atmosphere where each decision Nathan faced could result in cascading consequences, and she noted that the potential for transformation extended beyond the plateau itself into the broader context of her civilization's strategy and interspecies relations. As Nathan continued to navigate the ridges, tracing his fingers along luminescent surfaces and mapping energy fluctuations, the Queen's internal calculations tracked each variable, noting that the humans' capacity for pattern recognition, environmental adaptation, and real-time feedback integration was producing a level of discovery that her sensors and historical data could not fully predict, and the realization that this being could serve as both an agent of observation and an unintentional catalyst for change intensified the personal tension between them, highlighting the emergent significance of trust, Awareness and coordination, the plateau's spires shimmered in response to the interplay. Amplifying the effects of Nathan's exploration, while Auralia acknowledged internally that the implications of his presence could shift the trajectory of interspecies understanding, environmental management, and strategic evaluation, and that the convergence of human intuition with alien infrastructure had created a moment of decision whose consequences would echo far beyond the immediate landscape, marking the highest point of tension in their encounter, where observation, action, and consequence intersected in a critical balance that neither could ignore and where the next choice could redefine the rules of interaction between species and environment alike. The wind over the crystalline plateau had begun to calm, the harmonic pulses stabilizing into a rhythm that Nathan West could now interpret more clearly, and as he carefully adjusted his scanner to align with the energy nodes, he realized that his previous actions had initiated a series of predictable responses, creating a loop of feedback that allowed him to interact with the environment in a cooperative manner rather than merely reactive. Auralia observed the synchronization between human movement and spire resonance, recognizing that the potential for mutual understanding was no longer hypothetical but demonstrable, as Nathan's careful calibration had established a new dynamic in which his presence contributed positively to the lattice's stability, a revelation that changed the stakes of their encounter and introduced a framework for cooperation that had not existed before. As the Queen analyzed the patterns, she noted that Nathan's cognitive approach integrated observation, adaptation, and predictive response in a way that complemented the structural design of the plateau, allowing both species to benefit from shared information and environmental feedback, and the realization of this symbiosis prompted a subtle recalibration of Auralia's internal assessment, the implications extending beyond immediate interaction to considerations of diplomacy, cultural exchange, and the potential for long-term collaboration. Nathan moved along a series of interconnected ridges, each step reinforcing the harmonic patterns and providing data that could be interpreted as instructions for further exploration, and the plateau responded with precise adjustments that indicated a form of reciprocal acknowledgement, revealing that his decisions could guide the activation of nodes and the illumination of previously dormant pathways, which both simplified navigation and enhanced the understanding of the environment's intricate communication systems. The tension that had been present earlier, born from uncertainty and the unpredictability of human influence, now shifted toward a measured anticipation, as both Nathan and Auralia could observe and predict responses, creating a foundation for trust that was grounded in evidence and active participation, and this cooperative dynamic allowed them to experiment with more complex interactions, revealing patterns of environmental adaptation and energy modulation that had remained inaccessible when approached individually. As he continued, Nathan's discoveries highlighted the potential for hybridized strategies, where human intuition and alien structural intelligence could converge to produce outcomes neither species could achieve alone, and Auralia registered that this collaborative approach represented a transformative opportunity, one that could inform future practices, policies, and exploratory missions across her civilization. With each synchronization, the plateau's responses became smoother, signaling that the environment itself had integrated the human input as a positive variable, and the Queen recognized that the decision to trust this interaction had altered the trajectory of their encounter, moving from observation and assessment to active cooperation, and that the implications of this shift could extend into strategic planning, interspecies engagement, and understanding of intelligence on a galaxy-wide scale, confirming that the resolution of their interaction had not only stabilized the immediate environment but had opened the door to possibilities of future collaboration, discovery, and shared influence that would shape both human and alien perspectives. The plateau stretched endlessly beneath the fading sun, its crystalline spires casting long iridescent shadows that shimmered with the subtle hum of the energy lattice, and Nathan West stood at the center, observing how his presence had reshaped the patterns around him, the harmonics now flowing in synchrony with his own measured movements, revealing that the human mind had initiated a resonance capable of harmonizing with the alien architecture in ways Auralia had not anticipated. The Queen, towering and luminous, watched as the lattice seemed to acknowledge both his awareness and deliberate engagement, the plateau itself becoming a medium for shared understanding, where observation, intuition, and adaptation converged to create a cooperative interaction that neither species had previously experienced, and the realization of this potential filled the air with a charged sense of possibility, as if the entire environment had shifted to accommodate the outcomes of human insight. Nathan, scanning the network of nodes and runes, noted patterns that suggested the spires could encode and transmit information not only across the plateau but through temporal sequences that recorded the history of interaction, and the knowledge that his actions could leave a trace, a measurable impact on the alien system, reinforced the significance of every decision, movement, and observation he made, transforming simple exploration into a profound exchange of intelligence and influence. Aurelia's perception expanded, acknowledging that the human's capacity to adapt, anticipate, and integrate environmental feedback had created a bridge between species, a model of interaction that could be scaled, refined, and applied to future encounters, and the implications extended beyond the plateau to questions of governance, diplomacy, and the understanding of intelligence across civilizations, revealing that humanity's potential was not limited to physical endurance but encompassed the ability to harmonize with and shape complex systems. As the light of the twin suns reflected off the crystalline surfaces, creating a kaleidoscope of shifting patterns, Nathan understood that the plateau had become a living record of collaboration, each pulse of energy echoing his choices, reinforcing the concept that engagement grounded in observation, empathy, and adaptability could transform even the most alien of landscapes into a shared domain of understanding, and Aurelia, witnessing this, felt a quiet recognition that the human contribution was both unique and necessary, a catalyst for change that highlighted the transformative power of insight and cooperation. The plateau, once a test of survival and intelligence, now represented a new horizon where human ingenuity and alien awareness could coexist, each informing the other, and as the sun dipped completely beyond the distant horizon, casting the spires into a soft twilight glow, Nathan and Aurelia stood side by side, the energy lattice humming gently in a final cadence, a testament to the capability of human adaptability to alter, harmonize, and illuminate the cosmos in ways that promised a future shaped not by domination but by understanding, cooperation, and the extraordinary potential inherent in the human mind.